Hi, this is Michael Jasper. I'm Executive Vice President at Velocity Procurement, and I'm here today with Christian O'Meara, otherwise known as KO from JAGGAER. KO, nice to meet you. Good to have you here.
Thanks, Mike. Good to talk to you again.
Hey, so today we're going down into specifically how AI or artificial intelligence can be used within contract lifecycle management. So I think we just dig right into it. Uh, KO, what are your experiences? What's the best use cases for AI within contract management in your experience?
Yeah, so from my perspective within contract management, per our discussion previously, it's about organizational maturity. So some folks within their journey, if they're new to contract lifecycle management, really owe it to themselves to leverage AI to do attribute or metadata or clause level analysis and extraction. So in helping them build themselves on way to a repository where they can see all their contracts, control around their contracts. They can have visibility, proactive alerting about expirations and things of that nature. I think that's the simplest and easiest and first use case. It used to take us, going back 10 years ago, sometimes 6 months, a year for paralegals to dig through contracts and pull out these attributes. And now we can do it in a matter of, a series of sprints over the course of a couple of months, even in massive data sets that are 25,000, 50,000, 100,000 contracts in size. So it's really powerful, even for a less mature organization.
Interesting. And one of the things I've seen, we work with a lot of organizations implementing various different technologies in CLM. They're looking at clause analysis, and I've seen some attempts at automating this in the past. A lot of times, the problem is it's not looking at necessarily the intent of the language; it's looking at the physical words. Um, you know, how do you look at that from JAGGAER?
Yeah, so JAGGAER made a significant investment announced in February of last year. We added a couple of hundred people to our team with an acquisition we did specifically around AI in the contract space. And as part of that, that came with a risk assessment score capability. So they had spun out of a larger organization and were doing some very innovative things in highly regulated environments where they were taking standard clauses, standard language, and they were signing essentially a score on a 0 to 100 about the risk against the standard set of language. The effort here, having worked with legal departments for the last 30 years, is all about prioritizing their efforts and their focus. Where do we put their attention, their expensive resources? There's a finite pool of them available. You don't want to pay for external counsel if you can avoid it. So how do we point them towards the clauses that cause the most consternation, introduce the most organizational risk, and really provide a level of anxiety for practitioners within the procurement organization or in the strategic sourcing or category management organizations where they need legal's assistance and help. So spend the time on those few finite ones that have high risk. We want to make sure the organization is protected. So that's JAGGER's approach to that area.
Okay. And another area I see a lot of AI use in, or beginning of the journey with, is in contract migration. And in our experience, a lot of different tools are starting to do that. However, we're still identifying gaps. It could be data capture, it could just be lack of data field support. What's JAGGER doing to help overcome these different areas?
Yeah, so we tried to jump to the lead in the pack here with the investment we made. And one of the things that comes with if you invest in the JAGGER CLM solution is we have spent the time over hundreds of customers to refine I'll call it a meaningfully large set of common contract metadata fields, terms, and clauses, of which JAGGER comes out of the box, ready, enabled, already has learned how to handle, digest, display, extract that information. One of the things we're continuing to do to push the envelope is we can't be considerate of all contracts. We can't be considerate of all the specific nuances of a customer's situation. So we're building and releasing this year a capability to effectively allow customers to train the AI to help it learn their nuances, their environment, their risk posture so that it can adjust. And if they have terms that are common in their commercial agreements or other type of agreements, they can very quickly train the model and focus on, the 20 most critical metadata fields or clauses that are pertinent to their organization, both in their sell side or their buy side contracts.
I think that'll be a huge jump forward from what I've seen so far in the market. So looking forward to seeing that.
Yeah, we're excited about it.
We've talked a little bit about some of the use cases here. Maybe without necessarily naming names, can you give some examples of how customers are using this and what their experience has been so far?
Sure. So I think the most common that I've seen used on the sort of, I'll call it the clause level risk assessment as it relates to CLM, is in two places. We have a highly regulated customer base. About 10% of our companies are public sector across the globe, and they're pushed to these activities where they have a high regulatory compliance hurdle, and they need to quickly assess all their agreements. When things like GDPR rolled out over the last couple of years, we needed to go back and look at all our agreements with our partners, our suppliers, and find out where data was, what protections we had in place, and how do we quickly look across tens of thousands of agreements and contracts and make sure that we're covered from an organizational perspective. So that's one. The other one I've seen used repeatedly is we have 11 of the 12 largest pharmas using a portion of our platform. A couple of those in particular are using our contracts AI capabilities to do clause level analysis in their M&A, I'll call it green room. So when they're looking for synergies or they're examining common clauses like change of control or termination language, they can very, very quickly in an M&A setting, which is often happening in a condensed period of time these days, assess the overall contractual risk or opportunity that exists within an M&A for synergies or things of that nature, so that they can pay the right price point for their stakeholders.
So, KO, to wrap up here, without giving up too many trade secrets, we know that AI is moving so quickly. We've talked about that. Can you share a little bit about where JAGGAER's going with artificial intelligence in the near future?
Yeah, so I think in addition to the smart teach I briefly touched on earlier, I'd talk about something like advanced dynamic contract validation rules. So what we're trying to do here is, back to the finite resources within the legal department, how do we go through a set of workflow, a set of steps in the contract prior to it being approved to ensure that the organizational checks and balances have been achieved? So being able to take that against the standard, whether it's supplier paper or internal originated paper, how do we make sure that we minimize the risk exposure to an organization? So those are some of the capabilities that we're extremely excited about that will be coming out sort of over the course of our next 12 to 18 months.
That's exciting. Can't wait to see all the stuff that's coming out here in the next year or so. KO,
Thanks.
appreciate your time here. I know we've got one more section. We'll be talking about supplier management in our next discussion. So looking forward to it.
Thanks, Mike. Have a great afternoon.
Thanks, you too.